Welcome back. I'm inviting you to be part of our conversation on social media. Use the hashtag #TheModise My guest is the SARS Commissioner Edward Kieswetter. Just before the break, you spoke about organized crime and illicit trades that are going on and whose interests may be served by the criticism leveled at the so-called rogue unit. What is the extent of the damage, if you will, to the South African economy by organized syndicates and illicit activities that lead to the withholding of taxes as well as undermining certain sectors of the economy?
Tim, a back of the cigarette box estimation, and we are busy reviewing that right now, which is why I'm saying is a broad estimation. It runs into tens of billions of rands of revenue loss by the fiscus. That's not the total tax gap. The total tax gap is well over 100 billion.
The tax gap currently?
The tax gap in South Africa, by the last report of the Davis Tax Committee.
So that's the under-collection.
That's the under-collection.
Of whatever is taking place by 100 billion, right?
Oh, well over 100 billion.
Yeah.
The total under-collection is made up of, at the lowest end, just negligence, and administrative non-compliance, which we obviously attend to. In the middle, we have what we call aggressive tax planning. These are the arrangements that large corporates and wealthy individuals engage in. And then on the far right, we have criminal activities. And what a criminal activity is where and often a syndicated group, because crime often requires more than one person or more than one party. What that refers to is, for example, where companies entities would be created purely for the purpose of creating VAT refund fraud, or significant mispricing, deliberate mispricing of goods that are imported, so that the customs duty is not... Let me give you an example. We have and intercept invoices of clothing that are imported from China or from India, where a jacket or a men's suit is declared at 17 Rand. Whereas just a high-level cursory evaluation says that suit must be at a wholesale price, somewhere between 300 and 500 Rand. Okay? Now, how do you declare a suit for that value? A woman's pajamas may be declared at 76 cents. And we see that in daylight being declared. And that is deliberately to... Now, that does not only rob the fiscus of money, it also distorts the internal economy, the domestic economy. Another is the over-declaration of goods exported. So you would package in the scrap metal sector, you'd package scrap metal and labeled it as finished goods to overstate the value, and you claim the VAT back on that. And so these are examples of deliberate acts of crime that are committed. The gold refining industry, the refining industries, is equally so. Minerals, as I said, more broadly. And so these are the examples of we see. We have seen a increase in VAT registrations. What SARS did as a matter of improving service to taxpayers, it refined and eased the burden of individuals to register VAT companies. The unintended consequence of that, not only does it help the honest taxpayers, it also creates an opportunity for dishonest taxpayers. And we've seen a proliferation of that. Right now, we are currently prosecuting 17 projects, including about 700 taxpayers' cases of similar kinds of activities that are fraudulent. In our large business center, we are currently auditing 25 companies that we believe are guilty of transfer pricing. Transfer pricing is when a local subsidiary have a parent and they overstate goods and services that is provided from the parent to the local subsidiary in order to siphon illicitly a financial flow offshore. Base erosion and profit shifting is another area of abuse. And what has happened, sadly, so remember, the revenue decline is a function of the economy, but also as a function of SARS having been rendered incapable of fully administering its mandate. And this is where we are. And it's going to require a resolute effort, hard work for the next few years.
Just tell me, how are you going about then correcting the weaknesses that you found, as well as some of the recommendations that came from the Nugent inquiry?
Yeah. So the Nugent report gives just over 30 recommendations, and some of that you would have heard in the public domain. What we are doing, we've addressed some of the leadership issues, we've resolved some of that. There's some procurement issues, some of them high level. For example, the Bain, which is still in process. Gartner, thankfully we've had a good meeting with Gartner, and are encouraged that they are prepared to begin to work with us to address some of those issues. We've set clear expectations of what we require of them. We are waiting for representation by them.
Just to be specific, I mean, Gartner is the technology side.
It's the ICT.
Right, and there's the question of a certain amount of money that's got to be returned to SARS.
Well, there's a number of questions. The first is the regularity of the procurement, and then secondly, the delivery of the service.
Okay, all right.
And we met on both matters and hoping to find a resolution that serves our interest well. Then there's the dismantling of the various units, but the large business center. On the 23rd of this month, we'll be relaunching the large business center. There's the High Court litigation unit that was dismantled. We are reassembling that. There's the compliance and integrity units within SARS, which is meant to ensure that we are professional, we act with integrity, because that's what's required of us. So all of these arrangements we are reassembling. Let me tell you a specific anecdote that is worth to reflect on, to understand the intention that drove this so-called reorganization of SARS. We were about to approve, or SARS is about to approve, an alternative or variation to the settlement committee of SARS that would have allowed the former commissioner or any future commissioner, if that were in place, to personally settle any tax dispute between SARS and a taxpayer in excess of 100 million. Let me tell you, as a commissioner, I would never expose myself like that.
Meaning that you, on the basis of your own opinion, you could say, okay, fine, I'll write
a conversation or a settlement discussion between myself and a taxpayer, say, I will settle a dispute. I would protect myself by living within very tight governance structures with a clear audit trail. So those are some of the examples. On the staffing side, we have to rebuild. We've already successfully recruited a few former employees who had left, who have high impact skills, and we will continue to do that. We've reassigned people who have been marginalized, 60 of them, to more meaningful work. And hopefully in the next few months we'll be able to start recruiting more people to begin to fill the leadership void and also the technical capability void.
Yeah, I want to ask you about some of the issues that people see in the public domain.
Sure.
Right? Example is the Zondo Commission. Huge amounts of money are being spoken about there that seemingly exchanged hands illegally. Bosasa case is a good one that we can start with. How would SARS deal with such a matter when you hear that so much money was paid to so-and-so for that purpose? How do you tax those types of monies?
So let me tell you, first of all, that the entire state capture that has given rise to the Zondo Commission, the Nugent Commission, the Mpati Commission for PIC have created an unusual volume of work for us and for the NPA and for the SIU and other agencies of government. So what we have done within SARS, we have created dedicated capacity within SARS that is responding to everything we hear coming out of the commissions. So whilst I cannot tell you individual taxpayers, I can give you the assurance that some of the information that was disclosed at the Zondo Commission has served as a risk flag for us to begin to pursue. So this is what we do. When we pick up something where we believe there is a probable cause for a tax risk, we then use our administrative powers, which is first, we will contact a party and say, it has come to our knowledge that A, B, C, D has happened. Can we ask you for information related to that?
And you have done that so far?
So we've done that in many cases. Zondo Commission in turn also requests information from us. Now we have a certain provision in law that allows us to share information, and we act within that. So there's a exchange of appropriate levels of information between all of the organs of state. We've signed, for example, an MOU with Advocate Andy Matibi and the SIU, with Advocate Shamila Batoy and the NPA and other agencies as well. So that allows for better inflow of information. So we can ask a request. The second one is we can call a taxpayer or group of taxpayers to a so-called tax inquiry, and we've done
now let me ask you this final question, and I want your opinion, and relatively briefly, if you can. What is your view of the tax situation, given what you've been able to collect and the impact thereof on the fiscus?
It's huge. It's huge. If you think that last year we undercollected by over 50 billion, that's 50 billion on the revenue side. And then if you look at the expansion of state expenditure, whether it is the money that goes to SOEs, the additional money that goes to fund social programs, necessary social programs, you have this unusual but also very high risk fiscally, so divergence of revenue and cost. And we couldn't have asked for a worse combination of a growth, expense growth that is going in the wrong direction, and the revenue growth in the opposite direction. And so what that does for the fiscal framework is significant, because not only can we no longer deliver the goods and services, it also means that potentially our cost of borrowing goes up because it affects our fiscal credibility.
And of course may lead to even tax increases going forward, and unfortunately it's the people who pay more, and the ones who don't want to pay will continue, but depending on what you do and how you respond.
Well, we would hope that long before we need to increase taxes, we can improve the efficiency of collection, because that's the easiest money that we should be getting.
Edward Kieswetter, the South African Revenue Services Commissioner, thank you very much for having been our guest. We appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And after the break, we will be focusing on the work of the Special Investigating Unit under Advocate Andy Matibi. Let's find out from him what they've been up to and what the Special Tribunal will be doing for the country.